What is egg? Well, physically an egg is an ovoid, the three-dimensional form of the shape oval, from the Latin word ovum, meaning egg. So technically an egg is an egg. But it's also an organic vessel containing the zygote in which an embryo can develop until it can survive on its own. That is to say that eggs contain and represent birth. A lot of animals on the planet rely on eggs to protect them in the most vulnerable stages of their development. A baby bird isn't ready for the harsh realities of life until it can break out of its eggshell on its own. Around 350 million eggs are formed in the very early stages of a human fetus's development. And although that number may dwindle over that fetus and child's life, they're never replaced. This means that when a human woman is pregnant with her daughter, she's in fact carrying all of her potential future grandchildren. Wow. Other amphibian and fish species rely on the nutrient-rich content of the egg sac and the egg yolk to aid development even after the animal has hatched. This is a practice that humans have incorporated into their diet for millennia. As a rich source of protein, eggs provide an essential and easy-to-consume source of nutrition to add to the human diet. Eggs are funny little things. Humans can often use them as inspiration in their work, their art or their comedy. This is my friend Tiddy. In her show, Egg, she used the egg as a metaphor for the oppression that women face in their everyday lives. It was very, very good. And these are my friends Studio Yes. They made a film about an egg who likes to dance. I don't really know why, but it was also very, very good. But I'd like to talk a little bit about how eggs can represent endings. Today is the 3rd of June, my birthday. Actually, today's the 4th of June. Yesterday was my birthday, but I was too drunk to physically do anything. But last year, on my birthday, the 3rd of June, due to a series of unfortunate clerical events and some terrible timing on fate's behalf, we held the funeral and cremation for my grandmother, someone who I loved very dearly. When my grandmother was born, Al Capone was at the apex of his power. The most famous person in the world was probably Charlie Chaplin, and the head of Warner Brothers Films was famously quoted as saying that movies with sound would have no commercially viable success. Awkward. My grandmother lived a long and remarkable life, but much to our displeasure, the remainder of that life had to be spent at a small care home in West London, Greenford to be specific. As she brought her life to an end on her own serene terms, I would spend more and more of my time there. Sat with her, staring out the window peacefully next to her own bed, a bed she couldn't get up from, as she held my hand. Once she fell asleep holding my hand, and I managed to capture it on my dad's old 35mm Canon SLR. It remains to this day probably my favorite photograph that I've ever taken. When we hear about death, it is often sudden, sometimes traumatic, very removed from our own personal experience. What we never talk about is how painfully strange and slow death can be when it isn't sudden. As the human body begins the process of shutting itself down, it starts to refuse food and eventually water until it can go no further. As my grandmother entered this stage of her death, one of the only things she would consume for breakfast and most of the day was a small soft-boiled egg. This is Adam, and this is his mum, Chrissy. But we just call her mum. Adam has also used eggs to derive humour in his work.
Don't drop eggs.
As you can see, the work is also very, very good. Adam and Chrissy live a mere 2 miles from the care home my grandmother passed away in Hanwell. In order to make my early morning breakfast egg appointments with my grandma, I would often stay at Adam and Chrissy's house the night before. And as my scatterbrain is prone to do, forget to bring my own eggs and end up stealing some of theirs to take for my grandmother's breakfast. It would go something like this. Hey guys, can I borrow an egg?
Are you going to give it back?
No. And then my grandmother died. Holding my hand, in fact. A moment that will forever indelibly be inscribed on my memories. And all of a sudden, my egg routine was gone. A few months later, for Chrissy's birthday, along with a real present, I gifted her a box of eggs as a sort of thank you. And it struck me as so strange that a gesture that could be so odd and playful to somebody else would be so meaningful to us. And now, exactly a year later, my approach to eggs has changed. When I think of eggs, I think of little birds, I think of the beach, finding mermaids' purses, those little shark eggs. I think of my friends, how lucky I am to have them, how funny they are, and how many of them use eggs in their work. To me, an egg is birth, but it's also life. Laughing with your friends, crying with your friends, crying mostly with your family. All the things that happen to us on this crazy flat earth. And they represent death. This is a dedication to eggs. Those weird little f***s. Life is hard.